Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a brand new steam loco by Hornby. Today's new loco then is this. It is the Hornby LNER B17, which Hornby have produced before, of course, but this is the subclass B17-5, which has a different body. This has the Streamlined body, which completely transforms the look of the loco, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this thing. So Hornby announced this loco back in January of 2023, so less than 2 years ago, and back then the full RRP was £209.99, which, while pretty expensive, would have made this model available for less than £200 at the retailers, which I think would have been fair. Unfortunately though, between announcing this and releasing this, Hornby have increased the prices massively, so that now the full RRP is £249.99, which is an increase of about 20%, which is way beyond the rate of inflation, so Hornby can't blame inflation for this. And when Hornby tried to justify their recent price increases, the September ones, by claiming we have not had any major price changes since January 2022, I have to wonder what they mean by that, because 20% in less than 2 years is certainly quite a major price change, isn't it? And it's happened since 2022 as well. And in September, which is tomorrow, this model is slated to increase in price by another 10%, which is absolutely shocking, isn't it? But then again, obviously Hornby do have a bit of a habit of bending the truth in order to make them look better than they really are. And of course, I have a habit of exposing them for that, which I'm happy to do. But seriously, Hornby, I think the time has come to start getting a bit more serious. Your customers are not stupid, and it's probably time to stop treating them as such. But anyway, this is much more expensive now than it was when I pre-ordered it. I pre-ordered mine from the Model Centre for £188.99 in January 2023, and now less than 2 years on, I've just paid £224.99 for this, which is much more than I originally agreed to pay. Now obviously this prototype is quite a niche one, maybe it won't have a particularly broad appeal, so yeah, fair enough, I can see why it might have to be a little bit more expensive for that reason, and that's why I've decided to still buy this and see what it's like. But now that I have paid all that money, now that I have got the model, I've got some very high expectations for this. This model needs to match that massively expensive price that I've just paid for it. And Hornby have sort of tried to do that with recent releases. They have started to include die-cast bodies on their new locos, working lamps, firebox flickers, painted crew included. It's features like that that I'm really hoping to see with this model, if it's going to be anything close to worth the money. But we'll see. So if you're interested in these, affiliate links in the description. Let's see what this is like, let's see if this is worth the money, and let's see if Hornby have finally gotten their act together and produced something that is actually worth having and not a complete rip-off. So let's find out, let's get started. And what a delightfully unusual locomotive this is. So strange to see a 460 like this with the streamlining. I think every other British streamlined loco that I've got is either a Pacific or much larger than a Pacific. So such a small loco with A4-like streamlining is very, very exciting to see. Can't wait to get this out and see this running. Anyway, the version I've got, let me show you the end of the box, is R30136. It is the LNER Class B17/5 460, number 2859, East Anglian. It's Era 3, and it's also DCC ready with a 21-pin DCC socket in the tender, I believe. So this is not an entirely new model, which again calls the price into question. As I understand it, this uses Hornby's existing B17 chassis and just has a new body for both the loco and the tender. I think that's the case. I will compare the chassis later on to verify or bust that myth. But the previous release of the B17 did not have a 21-pin DCC socket in the tender, which suggests that this chassis has undergone some improvements and upgrades. Hopefully that will go further and include lighting, perhaps other nice features as well, we'll have to see. And if I show you the end of the box, you can see we've got a brief history of this loco in real life. Pause and read that if you'd like to, although I will give you some background in just a second. And then on the end of the box, we've got some drawings from Hornby which are dated 2024. Yeah, love the streamlining on this. But with that, I think it's time to get this out and see what this is like. Really hoping this is going to be quality and worth the money. This is too much to pay for a loco that isn't bang up to date with all the latest features and obviously top quality too. Let's see, quite a tough one to open this. But there we go, got it off. Nicely packaged, of course, with Hornby's new larger style of packaging, which is good. Lots of foam to cushion it. And there is the loco. Yep, looks like an A4, but of course it's considerably shorter and has a totally different wheel configuration. Wow. Okay, well, get that out in just a second, but first let's see what instructions we have. This might tell us if the chassis changed at all. So, Class B17 operating and maintenance instructions, generic information on the front. Inside, lubrication, yeah, so it's just the crank pins and the axles. Accessories, what accessories have we got? So it looks like cylinder drain cocks. We've got an optional NEM coupling for the front of the loco, buffer beam details, including what looks like a screw link coupling, which is good. Loco to tender connection. So they've reverted then back to the old loco to tender connection, which is obviously less convenient than the new push together one, but with the Black 5, for example, that was a complete nightmare. So while this is old-fashioned and it's confusing that this new loco doesn't have this latest feature from Hornby, at least the loco should work with this drawbar. And then DCC and sound fitting, yeah, as you can see, there's the 21-pin decoder socket in the tender, but it doesn't mention whether or not there's a pre-fitted speaker. I will open this up then and check later on, but it doesn't look like it from the diagram. And then on the back, nothing much, just a bit about TV suppression, etc. So with that, let's see what we get in the pack. And there is like another instruction booklet there, so let's open this up and see what that's about. It's in the accessories bag, so let's pull that out. I think it's just about brake rigging. Maybe that wouldn't fit on the main instructions, I don't know. But yeah, that's all it is, brake rod assembly. And that shows where it goes and has no more information than that to offer. And then in the accessories bag itself, we have the brake rods as promised. They look pretty good. And then we've got the painted cylinder drain cocks, the NEM coupling as promised as well, and also a movable screw link coupling, which is good to see. A couple of other little buffer beam parts as well, but I'll put those aside. Let's take a look at the loco then. Now, the finish of Hornby's other new releases has been absolutely amazing, so hopefully this will be as well. It's a very attractive looking loco, and a nice finish could really put the cherry on top of that. So let's take a look. It's well wrapped up. Gosh, there we have it. Yes, what an amazing finish. And the thing that's hit me is the distance between the front end of the loco and the cab. So short, so incredibly short. What an interesting loco, and yeah, beautifully, beautifully finished. So let's lift it up. Of course, with that drawbar design, it is going to be fixed to the tender. And wow, the weight of this is absolutely fantastic. And why? Because the body is die cast. Fantastic. So this was not part of the Hornby Dublo range. This was just advertised as a Hornby Railways loco. Nothing mentioned really in the listings that I saw about the die-cast body, but yeah, it is made of solid metal. It feels quality as a result. It looks quality too, I would say. And of course, it's incredibly heavy as well. I'll get this on the scales for you in just a minute. But yeah, straight away, that has impressed me. This feels like a good quality model. I don't know yet whether it's worth £225, you know, I'll have to look at some of the other features first. But my first impression, knowing that this is all metal, is very reassuring. The tender is plastic, yeah, plastic chassis, plastic body, feels much lighter, but of course it's the loco that's the important bit. So I'll take a much closer look at this in just a second, but first up, let's have a bit of background on the B17s in real life. The Gresley Class B17 was introduced in 1928 as a more capable development on the older Holden B12 locomotives, which ran on the Great Eastern Main Line. Here there were severe weight restrictions which meant that Gresley's larger Pacific locomotives could not be used. Instead, the B17 was born, but it shared many of the same features as seen on the A1 Pacifics, including the cab, cylinders and motion. The B17 also borrowed parts from other successful designs, such as the boiler design from the K3 Mogul. As evidenced by this model though, many B17 subclasses were built, ranging from the B17-1 all the way up to the B17/6. The different subclasses had altered boilers, different springing, alternative tenders, and of course streamlining, as seen on the B17-5. Only 2 locomotives of the class received this streamlined casing, and it served no practical purpose other than for good publicity, with the possible exception of deflecting smoke up and above the loco, improving visibility. As mainly a publicity stunt though, the streamlining didn't really last, and both locomotives eventually had it removed. This example lost it in 1949, having retained the streamlining for just a little over a decade. The entire class of 73 locomotives were eventually withdrawn between 1952 and 1960, with no examples surviving into preservation, except for one tender which does survive. A new build is under construction though, and it's being developed by the B17 Steam Locomotive Trust. So there you have it, up close and personal for you, Hornby's new B17/5. And yeah, this is a beautiful model, as you can see, and beautiful as it is, as I feared really, it is quite light on features for the price. For example, as we saw from the accessories bag, no painted crew included with this model. Now I thought that was going to be a standard feature for Hornby's new Steam releases, but apparently not. It doesn't have Hornby's new working lamp feature, although to be fair that's probably for the best. It doesn't have etched nameplates. They are separately fitted, as you can see, but they are just plastic parts without any relief on the text. Seen much better than that on cheaper models than this, where there have been proper etched nameplates provided. Also, not even a firebox flicker effect inside the cab. Again, that feature is pretty ubiquitous today. Why such an expensive model doesn't have this and those other features, I'm not quite sure. So whether it's worth the money or not remains to be seen, but I can say the quality of this model is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, the die-cast body really does a lot for this, I think. Not everybody's convinced on the benefits of die-cast bodies, but for me, yeah, it does a lot for the model. The quality is great, the finish is lovely, and the weight is wonderful as well. So this weighs in, loco and tender, at 405 grams, which is almost 100 grams more than the old B17, which has the same chassis, same everything, just a different plastic body. Yeah, much heavier than that. And it's actually even heavier than a Hornby A4, which is obviously much larger, but again, just has the plastic body. So the metal body here really has done a lot for this one. A question people usually ask with a die-cast body, what is the quality of the moulding like? Is it as sharp as you'd see on plastic? Well, as usual, not quite. I think in places the moulding does look a little bit soft. In other places though, it looks perfectly sharp. So a bit of a mixed bag. I think overall on balance though, it is worth having the metal body. We've also got this very noticeable, well, what looks like a parting line up on top of the boiler, but that is supposed to be there, I believe. The actual parting line for the moulding is just here, and it's been quite well disguised, so that is not an issue. Let's talk about the decoration then. So as I've already noted, the finish is just wonderful, absolutely gorgeous, perfect balance between matte and gloss, nice satin finish, looks fantastic. We've got the banding on the streamlined boiler here. Yeah, that looks great. Very, very precisely done as well. And of course, there's lining around the valances as well, which has been nicely done. The side of the cab is fully lined, as you can see, where we've also got the running number printed onto there. Very high quality printing, actually. The wheels in particular have been done very, very well. In fact, even Bachmann don't get the lining on the wheels as spot on as this. And the way the wheels peek out from under the valances on the side is just delightful. I really do enjoy that. Around the front where the buffer beam should be, we've also got the running number. That looks good too. And we've also got this wire here. Is that what's used to activate the whistle? Well, that's not a separate part. That has just been picked out in the decoration too. as has this component here. Not 100% sure what that would be, because the whistle is in front of the chimney, and that is a separately fitted metal part. That's really good quality. This though is just a part of the moulding, and it's been picked out. If you know what that is, do comment down below. In terms of detail and separately fitted parts, it's a relatively simple model. There's not loads of pipework and tons of separate parts. So again, why this is so expensive, I just don't know. But what is here has been done extremely well. So we've got the metal buffers, which are sprung. So there you go, sprung buffer fans, me included, will be happy with this. Not much fitted to the buffer beam, although there are accessories for you to fit here if you want. We do have lamp brackets pre-fitted though, which are nice and straight, that's good to see. We've got one a little bit higher up in front of the whistle as well. The chimney section is a separate part, and that's been nicely moulded, I believe in plastic. We've got riveting and moulded detail across the sides of the body. That's pretty much it, except for the wire handrail, which is a very sturdy thing. I like that a lot. And it's quite a complicated thing as well, because it follows the profile of the loco body, so it's had to be sort of shaped to it. And there's also this kink at the back where it follows the profile between the Streamlined casing and the cab. It's all been done very well though, that looks great. Up on top of the cab we've got moving vents, which is really good to see, 4 of those, and they let a little bit of light into the cab. We've also got metal safety valves, which are sort of installed into the top of the casing there. Again, nice to see metal details like that. We've also got glazed windows, which have their frames picked out. That looks wonderful. And of course, we've got handrails around the outside of the cab as well. We do have cab doors pre-fitted, although these have been left black. From what I can gather from photos of the real thing, these should have been the same colour as their body, so pity about that. Strange tender fall plate on this. This one's not adjustable, it's a big plastic piece, but on the real B17s that's how they looked as well, so that's not an issue. The cab interior, except for the lack of firebox flicker, is just fantastic. Now I think most of this has been pinched from the original B17 release because it's almost exactly the same, but the standard of this cab is amazing, far better than we see on newly designed cabs from Hornby today. So we've got all the pipework picked out, which looks great. Paintwork on the gauges, look at that. Real transparent water gauges achieved with the use of sort of transparent acrylic, I suppose. Yeah, that looks great. Separately fitted components, which are all separately painted. Yeah, it's a really, really impressive cab. Apart from the lack of lighting, the best I've seen in a long time, I think. Let's take a look at the tender then. Now, I'm not certain whether this is a completely new tender or whether it's just the body that's new, but the body certainly is new, and it's a very tall and interesting body as well, and the coal load is kind of almost covered by the top of the Streamlined tender there. The coal load, as far as I can tell, is glued in place, but of course it's low enough down that you could add your own crushed coal on top of it if you weren't satisfied with the plastic load, although I think that is perfectly satisfactory, to be fair. Finish on the tender body, absolutely fantastic. We've got the L&ER lettering, as well as the lining, which is really lovely on the body, and also the chassis, which has all been picked out in the red there. Yeah, very, very well done. Lots of separate details here, such as the wire handrails, which are straightly fitted. We've also got some controls around the front where there's even more moulded detail. And then around the back, we've got quite a few separately fitted parts here. More handrails, more lamp brackets, and also these steps, which are separate as well. The buffer beam on the back is a bit more finished. We've got the coupling hook pre-fitted here, and also a vacuum pipe, plus more sprung buffers, which look great. We've also got the plate for the tender, which has been printed on as well. We've got no brake rigging pre-fitted. As you can see, that's been left for the user to fit, but you can see that there is a water scoop under there, which is pre-fitted. In terms of couplings, we've got the slightly sprung tension lock on the back of the tender and no NEM pocket on the front of the loco as standard. If you want to fit a coupling to the front end of this loco, you have to screw the NEM pocket onto the front bogie here, and then you can do that, but that's all included in the accessories pack. So level of detail, fantastic. It's pretty much where it needs to be without any of the fancy features. Confusing for the price, but generally, as far as the model's concerned, I don't have an issue with that. The quality is very high indeed. I love the die-cast body. There's no visible glue. It's been put together very, very carefully. The only issue I did notice was a bit of stray paint over on the other side, which lets it down a little bit because otherwise it's such a high quality model. So not 100% convinced on the value, but apart from that, it is a lovely, lovely model. Really, really happy with this overall. But I've not seen this run yet, and I've not seen what the mechanism is like. I'm hoping inside this model, I'll start to find evidence that this is a £225 model. Well, let's get started and let's find out. So there she is down onto the track, looking fantastic actually. Can't wait to see what this looks like with a rake of coaches. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there. I have already filmed the initial performance test and I'll show you how that went in just a second. After that, I took this thing apart to see what was on the inside. And yeah, there's not really a whole lot to report on with this. It is quite basic. Nothing wrong with simplicity, of course, but it does seem awfully basic for what it costs. But let's get into this. It does check most of the boxes, to be fair. So it does have tender pickups on all of the tender wheels, which is great. And it's also got pickups on the Loco driving wheels as well. So we've got 12 pickups in total, 6 per rail. That makes this a really nice and reliable Loco. As we saw earlier on though, it does still have Hornby's old-fashioned drawbar design, which again is quite confusing given the price. Now, obviously the new push-together drawbar was faulty and problematic on the new Black 5, but it was fine on other models. So again, for over £200, I would have liked to have seen the updated drawbar design here, just perhaps with it actually working, because it does look better, it's more convenient, and of course you haven't got the wires going between Loco and tender. Yeah, pity to see an outdated feature like this here. The base keeper plate is held on with these screws, and for the first time on the B17, I believe, the base is now fully removable, so you can take it off the engine and that leaves you free to clean the pickups, which is great. I believe this base keeper is a new part because the old base keeper, at least on my old B17, had 2 parts to it. The bottom part had the pickups fixed onto it and they were hardwired. So yeah, it is more serviceable now, which is great. The Loco has proper separately fitted bearings on the driving axles, which is really good to see. Same with the old B17, of course, and it is the central axle that's driven on this Loco. Body removal should be quite easy with this Loco because it just involves 1 screw underneath the front bogie, but what the instructions didn't mention was that there is the speedometer assembly, which is attached to both the chassis and the body. Now, with this streamlined body, it would have been really easy to have modified that design so that the speedo was attached just to the chassis, but unfortunately it's not. So to remove the body, you do have to unscrew that crank pin at the back and take the speedo off. A little bit inconvenient that, but no big deal. And here is the chassis, and it is indeed exactly the same as the old B17 chassis. So that means that Hornby have not had to develop a new chassis for this new version of the model. And again, that begs the question, if they've not had to invest in a new chassis for this Loco, why is it so damn expensive? They will have saved quite a lot of money on not having to develop a new chassis for this. So the price of this engine is just completely perplexing. Now again, this is a niche Loco. I'm not expecting them to give these away to customers for a song, but could they really not have matched the price of a competitor's 460 at about £170 or something? I don't know, it seems a lot when they're reusing a chassis. Now if I compare this with the old B17, you can see it does look a little bit different, but the change is this piece on top, the part that screws down onto the motor and holds that on. That is a new piece and it's a bit bigger and more substantial than the old one, but as far as I can tell, that is the only change. It has the same style of motor, which is a 5-pole motor as far as I can tell, but if I do remove that cover that holds the motor in place, you can see there's no flywheel fitted here. Again, 250 quid RRP and we haven't got a flywheel. It's very, very light on features, no lighting of any kind on board. The chassis is extremely simple, it's just a motor, gears and the wheel sets. That's all it is. In terms of accessing the DCC socket, you have to remove the tender body, which is held on with 2 self-tapping screws. So no separately fitted threads here, it's just screwed into the plastic. Again, quite cheap on an expensive model. And here is the 21-pin DCC socket with plenty of room for a decoder, which is great. Again though, no pre-fitted speaker here. There is a space for one, but none fitted. Again, at this price, would it have killed them just to include one? I don't know. This lack of features on this model is a bit insulting now, isn't it? Because there's a massive list of things that this model hasn't got, when there are other models out there which are much cheaper than this that have miles more features than this. So that is the biggest disappointment with this model, I think. And then the gauging is a little bit off. It came in at 14.1 to 14.2 millimeters back to back. So we're up to 0.3 millimeters below the standard there. Yeah, that's a little bit far for my liking, and I did have a few issues around curves with this, although perhaps that's not to do with the gauging because that did improve with running in. But yeah, the mechanism's okay. I would have liked to have seen a flywheel at the very least. I suppose the other missing features are fair enough, although not really for the money. But anyway, yeah, decent mechanism. Let's now jump back in time and let me show you how this loco ran. Okay, moment of truth then. Let's find out how well this thing works. I can't actually remember how well the old B17 from Hornby performs, so I'm going into this quite fresh. But of course, even if it is exactly the same chassis, which I think it is, it's still much heavier than the old B17, so is the mechanism up to that? Well, let's find out. Does it work at all? Forwards direction, first bit of juice, here we go. It does, it's going. And of course at this point it hasn't run in yet. This is literally the first run it's done with me, so I am going to let this run in completely before I sort of make any judgments on the performance. But I have to say, even now after just a few seconds, it seems nice and smooth. That's lovely. Yeah, really, really lovely, and I do really enjoy the way this looks with its streamlined casing. Ooh. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what's the speed and gearing like? Again, I forget exactly what this was like on the old B17, but on this one, here's 50% speed or half power. Yeah, so not dreadfully fast. It's quite on the slow side, I would say, for an express passenger loco like this. Although, like I say, it's its first run. Sometimes locos do speed up a bit after they've had an hour or so. But yeah, for the moment, that's what it's like. What's the torque like then? That's the big question. Of course, this chassis wasn't necessarily designed with such a heavy body in mind. So, is that going to cause any issues at this point? Let's see, 50%. Alright, well it is able to turn its wheels. Yeah, seems to be struggling a little bit, and it's obviously slowing down a lot, but yeah, there is some torque there. I think given how heavy that body is, that's not too bad. Okay, so I won't judge the crawl until it's run in, but let's just see what it can do straight out of the box. See if that motor's any good, shall we? Okay, turning it up very, very slowly. I've already seen it do a fair crawl already, so I'm hoping it'll be good. Bit more, I reckon. Oh, yeah. Gosh. Is it? I can't really tell. Is it moving? It is. Well, that's insanely good, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not going to turn it up any more than that. I think it is going. Wow. Bit more. Bit more. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the old B17 being as good as this. Maybe it was. It's been a long time since I've reviewed it. Ooh. Fancy. Wasn't really expecting that. Yeah, that seems really, really lovely. Slight question mark over the torque, but that may well improve as it runs in. We'll see how it gets on around the curves. Any flywheel effect? Cut the power? No, not really. Might not have a flywheel then. You guys will know all this, so I won't go into too much detail on that because at the moment I've not seen the mechanism. But yeah, I think with that we need to let this run in. So let's see how it gets on around the track. 50%, here we go. Okay, looking amazing as it goes around. Is it going to slow down on the curves? Oof. Yeah. Ouch. Okay, well it's staying on the track, which is more than can be said for that Black 5. And it does still need to be run in fully, so maybe that will improve. But yeah, I think there is room for improvement here, isn't there? Particularly if I'm going to hook this up to a rake of coaches and have it not slow down on those second radius curves. Yeah, so maybe we've got that issue again of a mechanism not designed for a body this heavy, struggling under the weight of the die-cast body. Maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe that will get better as this runs. We shall see, but for now we'll leave it there. I'm going to give this 30 minutes forwards and then 30 minutes backwards. Then I'll come back and we'll do some more testing. But so far, performance on the whole, pretty good, with the exception of the lack of torque. Alright, I'll be back in just a second. Alright folks, I am back. That is running in complete, and I'm pretty happy. I am pretty happy. I've not known this happen very often before, possibly even at all. But during the course of this loco's running in, I noticed it got better and better around that second radius curve, to the point where now it's almost not slowing down at all. It's well into the realms of acceptable now, which is awesome. I did have concerns about the torque of this thing, but if it runs okay around the track, then absolutely great. How this is going to perform with rolling stock, I don't know yet, but fingers crossed it will be fine. But yeah, it's a really nice runner, actually, really enjoyable to watch. It just looks so majestic as it runs along, and of course very deeply unusual because of this streamlining. But yeah, it's nice and smooth, not derailing, not cutting out or anything, thanks to all the pickups. It's really, really decent. The tractive effort is 0.36 newtons, which is, I suppose, a bit on the low side, given how heavy this is, but as we saw under an obstruction, it was struggling to turn its wheels a bit. So I think it's more down to the motor and the torque than it is to do with the weight of the loco, which is obviously really impressive and heavy. But anyway, how is this running now? Let me run past at 50% for you. Let me just move my coaches back a bit. Okay, ready? This is what half power looks like now after running in. Yeah, obviously I'm not comparing them directly like you will be able to, but I would say that seems a little bit faster. And looking at it run, like I say, it does seem to have become a bit more lively as it's run in. So yeah, that looks good. I mean, the crawl was just astonishing straight out of the box. Is it still astonishing now? Let's see. Turning up slowly. Yep. I mean, it's a real snail. And can it do a smooth acceleration? Yeah. Is it as good in reverse? I'm just reeling through the tests here. It's passing with flying colours, I have to say, which is good because a lot of the past few Hornby locos, particularly the Black 5, have not been the best. But this one is really up there, isn't it? Yeah, look at how slow it can go. Another smooth acceleration. Oh, yes. Great. Okay, is the torque any better now that it's run in? Let me try the finger test again. I know people like to see this one. Up to 50. Oh, yeah. Is that 50? Yeah, that's 50 there. So that's better. Yeah. So if mine's anything to go by, a good run in is pretty important with this one because it's made a big difference. It doesn't always with other locos, but with this one it has. So that's something to bear in mind. Okay, so to test the pulling power, I've not gone insane or anything with the number of coaches. I've just set up 6 teaks and we'll see how she gets on hauling these around the layout and also that second radius curve. So let's go backwards. Let's check the couplings at the right height. Right, steadily does it. And yeah, looking at that, I think it is. Has it got it? Yep, perfect coupling with no issues. So with that, let's see how this gets on with some coaches coupled. Yeah, look at that, that's 50. And that's very lively, isn't it? And then on the middle line, I've talked about it a lot today, so I thought I'd better run it. I have the regular B17. I'm not sure which subclass this is exactly, but it's unstreamlined, so it's not the B17-5. Also by Hornby, same chassis, same everything, just got the different tender and the different body, of course. And yeah, it does seem to be a similar runner, although I have to say, I reckon the new model's got a better motor, because my BR green one here doesn't seem to be able to crawl quite as well. Maybe that's down to its age though, I don't know. And then on the inside, I've got another 460, that's today's theme, see if you can spot an odd one out. This one is the Thompson B1 though, so not a Gresley design, but I don't know, it always kind of reminds me of the B17s. Quite similar looking, similar kind of size, 4602 of course, with a bit of a train of open wagons. So with that, let's go and check in on the new B17, see how it's handling that curve. Okay, yeah, noticeably much quicker than it was. And now that it's got a load, yeah, it is slowing down a little bit on the curve and the incline. But I would say it's certainly acceptable now. This is going to be getting a good score on performance. Tiny bit of a slowdown, certainly nothing too much to worry about. And on DCC, of course, your mileage might vary. But yeah, this has gone from being pretty underpowered and disappointing to a great hauler. Nice and heavy, decent torque now that it's running. It's really undergone quite a transformation, which is great. I mean, I always run in my locos. I do that because it's fairest during a review, but I rarely see a massive change before and after running in. Sometimes you see slight improvements, but it's certainly rare to see such a dramatic improvement such as this. So yeah, I'm really pleased to see this running well, and relieved as well. You know, this is running now like a very, very expensive loco should, and that's well. So great. So yeah, an enjoyable loco. Very, very basic. And I do think when you consider even locos from Hornby themselves, such as the 9F, I mean, that is the same price as this now, about 250 quid full RRP. That came with the crew, it's got the flywheel, it's got the lighting inside the cab. That's die-cast as well, and it's a 9F, much larger, the same price. This, for the same money, does seem to be lacking quite a bit, I think. And then, of course, compare it to other locomotives from other brands. I mean, the Dapol Manor, to name another 460, that's going on £100 cheaper than this. And while that doesn't have the full die-cast body, it's still got more features than this has, including the firebox flicker. So, yeah, in terms of value for money, this loco is really quite disappointing. But if you can get beyond that, and maybe you won't, you know, it is a lot to afford, several days' work for most people. But if you can get beyond that and you do choose to get one of these, I wouldn't really fault the thing too much. It does look good. It has been built to a high standard, much better than the Black 5. It's a simpler model than the Black 5, fewer parts, less complexity, so that is to be expected, but the quality is good. And of course the Black 5 didn't have the die-cast body like this does as well, so yeah, it is miles better than that, and of course it works, which makes it better than the Black 5 as well, at least in my experience. So yeah, pretty pleased with this, a beautiful loco. Let's have some ratings then for Hornby's new B17/5. And as you can see by my ratings, it's a little bit of a mixed bag here. Obviously this is a fantastic looking loco, but given how much I paid for it, I was really hoping for this to be something special, when actually it turns out to be just a pretty average loco, which is pretty light on features given how expensive it was. So on that note, I've given it 3.5 for detail. On the plus side, decoration absolutely fantastic, particularly where the finish is concerned. That looks amazing. One of the better cabs I've ever seen, especially with the transparent water gauges. That looks great. It's got sprung buffers, quite a few separately fitted parts, metal whistle, that kind of thing. All of that looks great. On the downside though, the moulding on the bodywork is a little bit soft. Yes, it's die-cast, and die-cast moulding can be a little bit softer than injection moulded plastic, but I have seen slightly better. It comes with no painted crew, no lamps, no lighting in the cab, no proper etched nameplates, we've just got plastic ones. No route indicator discs or anything like that included, and a lot of Hornby's very expensive premium models do have features like these days, so not sure why this doesn't. I've knocked it down 1.5 stars for that. Performance though is much better. It's 4.5 for me. The crawl is absolutely amazing. I don't remember the old B17 crawling as well as this does, so that's fantastic. It's nice and smooth. It was slowing down very dramatically on the second radius when I first ran it, but the good news is a little bit of running in has massively improved that, so that now it's only really slowing down on those curves when it's got 6 coaches or so, and even then it's not as bad as it was, so it's improved. Torque not the best. Again, they've made this body much heavier without really upgrading the mechanism as far as I can see, so that's not the best in the world, but for all intents and purposes it really is a great performer. Pulling power, 23 coaches on straight and level track. I think this would have been higher if it had more torque, because it's only 0.1 newton stronger than the old plastic bodied B17, and I was expecting the difference to be larger than that, but it's still able to haul about 5 coaches more than the old model, which is okay. Mechanism then, yeah, it's pretty good. It's nothing fancy, and I kind of was expecting fanciness given how expensive this was, but to be fair, it does tick most of the boxes. Loads of pickups, that's great. Proper bearings on the driving wheels. It's nice and serviceable, which I like as well. It's just missing a few things such as the flywheel on the motor. It's a good quality motor, could have been better I think with a flywheel. No speaker pre-fitted, not a massive deal, but when you're paying this much, a pre-fitted speaker wouldn't have been too much to ask for, I don't think. And there's certainly no extras in this loco, such as lighting or the timing mechanism for synchronized smoke or anything like that. Yeah, it's very, very basic, but otherwise absolutely fine, 4-star. The quality is very, very high. Again, I've given it 4-star. Paintwork, print work, finish and such, wouldn't fault these. Do like that a lot. But on the downside, there was that bit of paint on the bodywork, that black paint, that didn't look great. Plastic nameplates, not etched ones, and self-tapping screws on the tender. With cheapening features like this, I can't give it 5-star, but yeah, the quality is good thanks to the die-cast body, which I like a lot. Value for money then, I think, is the biggest letdown for this loco because it's exceedingly expensive, yet pretty simple really in more or less every area. So I pre-ordered this for £188.99 less than 2 years ago, and I think at that kind of price this would have been expensive but understandable given the niche nature of the prototype. Now though, I ended up paying £224.99, which just seems too expensive for what this is. Why they put the prices up so dramatically before even releasing the model, I just don't know. And looking at the model, seeing how relatively simple it is, I can't understand why it should cost now £249.99 as a full RRP. It's just not worth that in my opinion. It's not worth the money, but that's not to say I wouldn't recommend this loco because obviously if you want a B17 with the streamlining, you've got no other option. So yeah, by all means, it's a good model. If you think you'd like one of these, then go for it. I'm just saying I don't think it's worth what you have to pay for it. So on that note, 6.93 out of 10, or a grade of E, which does seem harsh for such a great looking model, but it is spoiled by the high price and the lack of features for me. Into the logbook it goes then, where it's 20th place, yeah, it's not too bad, above the Dapol B4 and below Hornby's Class 08. So yeah, it's a fine model, but I think things have really moved on from the likes of this in terms of what features are on offer here. At least where other manufacturers are concerned, when you pay this much, you do get a lot more. So I do think Hornby are being left behind a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with the model at all, it's perfectly good, it's just missing a few things. So if you like this class and you don't mind the high price, there's no real reason why I would say don't buy this thing. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for my review of Hornby's new B17/5. Beautiful loco, too expensive by a country mile, but good looking and functional, which is the main thing. Do let me know what you think about this. Have I been harsh? Have I been fair? What do you think about the loco? Do let me know. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.